Welcome to Fortress of Faith with Tom Wallace, calling North America to repentance and revival.
Welcome to the Corner of Truth and Courage. This is Tom Wallace. When you think of George Washington, we think of him as a great, great leader, that everyone was in awe of his leadership. And yet, though, if you study a little bit more about the Revolution and the fight that he had to deal with, and the lack of munitions and supplies and funds, to be able to run this army, to fight one of the greatest military forces in the world at the time, the British, you would think that everyone stood in awe of his leadership. Well, they didn't. He had opposition, even in his own ranks. In fact, there was a conspiracy to do away with him. One of the generals, General Charles Lee, was known for his letter writing to others like Horatio Gates and General Joseph Reed, that he wrote to them and saying how Lee felt that Washington was not the man, that he could do better. And so there was a beginning of a mutiny that had started in the Revolutionary Army. And we don't really think of that. Washington had a number of defeats at the beginning, and his army was running down in numbers. Many people were leaving his ranks, and others had seen it. Thomas Paine wrote America in Crisis, and it was really because of Thomas Paine and his letter or article that he wrote. He was also the one who inspired a lot of men through his writing of Common Sense. But in this critical moment, the American Crisis was written by Thomas Paine. It was read to the troops there before they crossed the Delaware to attack Trenton, and that was the turning point in the war. But the morale of the people had dropped. And if you read the personal correspondence of George Washington, he himself was discouraged and despondent of, whether or not they could win this war. What a mighty change of events that they had crossed the Delaware in the quiet of the night and surprised attack there in Trenton and brought a victory and was a changing of the tide of that war. I want to take you back to a Bible character, Moses. I think many of us, we look at Moses as a great, great leader. In fact, to tell you what, if you were to Google, the founder of Judaism, well, they would identify Moses as its founder. This was the beginning point of the story or the leadership of the nation of Israel that took over the Promised Land, came out of Egypt and all that, and they might even bypass the leadership, the fathers of Abraham, and they turned straight to Moses. Let's look at Moses for a moment. And here recently, I stood there in Saudi Arabia at the foot of Mount Sinai, and it was not lost on me that while I stood there at this location, these events had transpired. And I want to take us in our Bible back to Exodus chapter 3. And it says there that Moses looked after the flock of Jethro. And so here he is, he's a shepherd. He was born in extraordinary circumstances. He was raised in the household of Pharaoh, at that time, the most powerful man in the world. The Egyptian power and wealth was great and feared around the known world at that time. But he had to flee, because he took the side of his birthright as a Jew and killed an Egyptian and fled, found his way out of the country and found his way out of Egypt's control into the land of Midian. And it says that he took the Jethro's sheep to the backside of the desert. And it's an interesting correlation here in Exodus chapter 3, that he sees a burning bush. He's at a place that the Bible calls the Mount of God. Gives the name also Horeb for that area. And God speaks to him out of this bush that's burning but not being consumed. As I'm standing there at the foot of Mount Sinai, I see these bushes that are there, and it's not lost on me that this is the area that God said to him, take off your shoes. This is holy ground. And then God calls upon him to go to Pharaoh to let my people go. Before I get into that, I want to address verse number 12. This is why we know this is Mount Sinai. In verse number 12, it says, and certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee. I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God upon this mountain. So God says to Moses, you're going to come back to this location. You're going to come back to this place here in Midian, not in Egypt. You're going to come out of Egypt, and you're going to bring my people, and you're going to worship me on this mountain where the burning bush is at. We're told in Acts chapter 7, verse 30, this mountain of God, this same story is called Mount Sinai in the book of Acts chapter 7, verse 30. So we know this is Mount Sinai. We're also told that in Galatians chapter 4, verse 25, for this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. Today we call Midian Arabia. It's now known as Arabia. And so we know this is the location, that it's not in Egypt, but it's in Arabia where Mount Sinai is at. Verse number 12, here's what Moses said. Verse 11 says, and Moses said, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? You know, we look at great men of courage. I mean, he went and faced off with Pharaoh, the mighty Pharaoh, but realize he started out as a man of cowardice. Who am I that's going to do this? And he started giving excuses. Chapter 4, verse 1, and Moses answered and said, behold, but they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, the Lord hath not appeared unto thee. You can say, they're going to say, who are you? Who gives you the right to say these things? Who died and made you boss, so to speak? And he was still filled with excuses. In verse number 10, and Moses said unto the Lord, O Lord, I am not eloquent, neither hereto, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. I can't be your spokesperson. I can't be your man to do this job. So we look at men of great courage, but we need to also understand that they're just regular people. They too have faults. Like we talked about Gideon yesterday, of taking men from cowardness into courage. That's what we're talking about this week. We often see great men and great leaders, but we also need to understand that they too start out as people filled with fear. Fear and cowardness is a natural response. And this is how Moses began. He didn't begin with great courage and wax eloquent and have all the answers. In fact, we see him making many, many blunders and many mistakes. But we also know that God uses just regular people. Sometimes I'll use this as an illustration. I remember back when we were first married, my wife and I, we didn't have much of a budget. We got married when we were in Bible college. And so, it's not a good time to fall in love when you're in Bible college. I always joke about this. I was so poor. My shoes, the leather in my shoes were so thin, I could step on a dime and tell you whether it was heads or tails. And, and we got married in poverty like that. But my wife wanted to make the house look good. And I remember those days, though, that she'd hang a picture. She'd have me help her and hang a picture here. And the next day, it's like, no, I wanted to move it here and locate it in a different area. And so one time I remember I didn't have my hammer to move that nail, but I had my shoe. So I took off my shoe and I, with the heel, pounded that nail into the wall and rehung the picture in a different location. And so sometimes I might raise up my shoe and ask people, what is this? And see, well, natural people will say it's a shoe. And say, no, it's a hammer. And then I tell my story. And the point is this: even though it wasn't designed to be a hammer, I got to use it as a hammer. Why? Because it was available. My hammer was not available. And I used what was available to me at the time to do the job that needed to be done. And that's how God is. God has created you and designed you to be a hammer, but you're not available to him. But what is available is a shoe. And God will use the shoe if it's available. The point is this, is that God will use, the big thing that's important to him is not so much your ability, it's your availability. And God is looking for common men. Like he looked and he needed a man to stand in the gap to fight a fight. And yesterday we were talking about him, Gideon. He saw himself as a coward, as a nobody. Who am I? I'm the least of my family. And God says, you're a mighty man of valor. And God took that man to perform a mighty miracle of bringing a defeat to the Midianites. And he did it in a miraculous way. Look what he did with Moses. I can't speak. Who am I to do this? He was a man filled with fear. But God took that man and made him into a leader. Oh, we need leaders today. We need men and dads to take a stand in their home. We need preachers to take a stand in their pulpit, to stop being cowards and take the stand, even against people in their own church if necessary, to speak the truth instead of fearing men, start fearing God. Oh, we need men and leaders in our country. We need men to stand in the gap. We need people to be leaders in their home, leaders in their community. When evil and wickedness shows up, we need men to stand up and say, God says this is wrong, and I'm standing with God. I'm siding with God. Who will join me? We need men like that. Oh, I pray that we would have men of courage to speak the truth. It's one thing to have the truth. It's another thing to have the courage to say it. That's going to be it for today. Join us again tomorrow at the corner of Truth and Courage. God bless you.
Are you enjoying Fortress of Faith? Hi, this is Gil Ford. Have you ever thought about how easy it is to just simply turn the radio on? And for free, we get edified by the teaching and insight of our favorite programs. We become grateful consumers of someone else's effort, work, and sacrifice, and somehow it is there every day on our radio for free. Yet, it is not free. It costs a great deal to the ministry to produce and air their program. Don't just be a consumer. Become a partner. Our spring fundraiser is here, and we need your support to keep sharing the unfiltered truth. Visit fortressoffaith.com to donate today. Together, let's build a fortress of faith that stands strong. Your tax-deductible gift makes it possible. That's fortressoffaith.com or call 800-616-0082. Again, that's fortressoffaith.com or call 800-616-0082.